Brian, and also Brian, who is doing like DevRel stuff, and also David is also here with us from TZ APAC. So there's 3 of us here. Okay, there's quite a number of you. I think some of you are repeated names from the previous session that we had on DeFi. So DeFi was a lot to digest, and I think today one will be slightly more fun, more expressive, because it'll be on NFT. So today the topic of NFT workshop, right, will not be about teaching you how to like flip NFTs or how to like retire by 30 by buying and selling NFTs. It will also not be a workshop about teaching you how to create your own NFTs, even though if we have time after the going through the content of the slides, I can talk about how or what is the process like creating an NFT, starting a whole collection of NFT, generative NFTs in that case. If not, maybe to get the ball rolling, you guys can open up the chat and then maybe just a show of hands, who owns like an NFT? And if you do own an NFT, like what blockchain do you own the NFT on? So maybe just 1 minute for anyone to share. If you own like a blue chip NFT, like a BAYC or CryptoPunk, and you want to dox yourself, feel free to go ahead. But if you do own an NFT, maybe in the next 1 minute, just type in the chat, yes or no, and then also like the blockchain that you own it. So David will probably have a lot across different blockchains. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, then I assume no one owns an NFT. Okay, then today's lecture will be very good to get you guys started. So just to make sure everything that I share later on, any NFTs that I talk about or share, it's not financial advice, means I'm not like shilling them based on my company, I'm not shilling them based on my own capacity. Please do your research before you purchase anything. So the content for today, we will cover a bit about what are NFTs. NFTs basically stand for non-fungible tokens, for those of you who still don't know what NFTs stand for. We'll talk about the background of NFTs, where it all started, which are some of the OG ones in the NFT scene. And then we'll talk about the use cases. So the use cases are something that not a lot of people are familiar with. All they know about is that, oh, it's digital art, it's digital collectibles, right? But NFTs go beyond just what you see on mainstream media or what is being publicized and talked about on mainstream media. And then we'll talk about the different blockchains that have NFTs or non-fungible tokens. And then specifically, of course, being from TZ APAC, we'll talk about Tezos. Why Tezos is the preferred choice as a blockchain for NFTs. We'll also share a bit more about the art that is on Tezos blockchain, the NFTs that are on Tezos. And then we'll explore a bit over the marketplaces. This will be towards like the end of the session, where I'll show you guys some interesting projects and walk you guys through some of the galleries and stuff like that. And then lastly, we'll talk about like the future of NFTs. Of course, the future of NFTs is still very speculative. Some of these are based on my own opinion on where I see like NFT evolving into. But generally, these are the topics that we'll talk about. At any point in time, if you need me to stop, pause, or answer any questions, just type in the chat. Brian will be there to answer you in text, or if I happen to see it, I will answer you verbally across the session. So this session will be 2 hours. I don't think I will finish up the whole 2 hours. So we will have a Q&A section at the end where you guys can ask any questions that you have. So I'll start off with explaining what are NFTs. So again, they are called non-fungible token, and they basically are stored on the blockchain to represent a unique item. And this NFT that is on the blockchain, think of it as like a unique hash, right? That can be used to tokenize anything in the real world or in the digital world. So for example, if like I have a mouse here, right, and I want to like tokenize this mouse, I basically tag it. I create an NFT on the blockchain, and then I tag that NFT to this mouse. And now the NFT basically represents ownership of the mouse on the blockchain, of course. And then if I were to sell the NFT, someone buys it, basically I'm transferring the ownership of an item over to the person. So this is different from fungible tokens. So fungible tokens is everything that you see, or those of you who are in crypto when you're buying Bitcoin, we are buying Ethereum, right? Those are fungible tokens because one Bitcoin is always equal in value to another Bitcoin, vice versa for Ethereum and all the other coins that you see. Yeah, but NFTs are unique. Okay, so just remember NFTs are unique and fungible tokens are not. Okay, so next we have this is probably like repeating what I'm saying. So it represents ownership of a digital asset. And this token resides in your wallet, which you own. Therefore, you own the ownership of a certain, it can be a collectible, it can be something like a sandbox land. And right now, there's still very little restriction as to what can be tokenized. And we'll discuss this a lot more in the use cases later when we touch on the use cases of NFTs. So some of the features of NFTs allow you a way to authenticate ownership, right? So if you want to prove that you own something, all I have to do is go to your wallet, open up your wallet and see, oh, okay, you do own this NFT, which represent ownership of, let's say, my mouse, right? So you can show it and say, oh, yes, I am the owner of the mouse on the blockchain, right? It's also permanent. And the reason it's permanent, of course, because of blockchain, right? Everything you put on the blockchain is immutable. It stays there. Even if like a country is down, you still have millions of other nodes that are running on blockchain. So this goes back to the basics of blockchain and how decentralization makes it permanent. And also you have blockchain recorded provenance. So what that basically means is that all your transfer of ownership, it's all locked, right? It's like a receipt. When someone on Carousel is telling you, oh, this laptop that I'm selling you, it's brand new, right? I just bought it last week. How can you be sure that he or she was the only owner before, right? So you can't prove that. You can't really prove that in real life. Yes, he or she can show you the receipt, but maybe the previous owner passed along the receipt together with the product, right? So that everyone can say, oh, this is first-hand good, and I'm passing it to you as second-hand. You can't prove that. It's very hard to prove that in the real world, but on the blockchain, it's very easy because every transaction of where this mouse, let's say, come from, right? When it's being issued from Logitech, it is recorded on the blockchain. It shows Logitech to user A, and then when user A sells it to user B, that's also recorded on the blockchain. So you kind of know how many transfers there are for a certain item. You also know the price that it was valued at a specific point in time. So it is also possible for more than one non-fungible token to represent copies of identical piece of art, which means that, for example, Logitech obviously didn't create only one of these mice, right? It created like, let's say 100 limited editions of these mice. And of course, like below the mice, there'll be like a serial number that label it like #1, #2, #3, #4, all the way to #100. So basically they look identical, like exactly the same, right? Each of the mouse look exactly the same, just that they have different editions of it. So, and each of them will have a different unique hash, therefore a unique token that represents it. Yeah, so an artist can create a painting and launch 100 editions of it, right? And so therefore he can actually sell it 100 times and have 100 unique owners that own a piece of the art. It's the same as, for example, like this sneaker here on the PowerPoint slide, right? If Gucci collaborates with like Doraemon to launch like limited edition sneakers, they can launch like 5 around the world and you have 5 owners that own the same thing technically, right? Because they look the same. But in essence, there's a little serial number inside that identifies them from 1 to 5. Yeah. So those are some of the features of NFTs. Now I'll jump into like the history of NFTs. So NFTs started all the way back in 2012, where there's this thing called the colored coins. They were basically made up of like small denominations of Bitcoin, and they are called like Satoshi, single Satoshi, which is like the smallest unit of Bitcoin. So they were used to represent a multitude of assets. They are used to represent like coupons, they are used to represent properties, or even issue like shares of a company. So this thought, or rather this system led people to realize that like there's a potential for NFTs, right? There's a way that we can represent things on the blockchain and tag it to a certain asset class, or a lot of things. Everything around you are asset classes, right? And then that was when in 2014, there's this group of people who founded Counterparty. It's a peer-to-peer like financial platform. and it's built on top of Bitcoin, the blockchain Bitcoin, and it allowed people to create asset. Basically like what you have now on Ethereum and all the other NFT marketplace, right? So it allowed people to create an asset on the blockchain and tag it with an NFT. And then this started a multitude of projects afterwards and spiraled into like your games like trading card games. And then in 2015, on the slide, you have the Spells of Genesis, which was the first like trading card game that has like in-game assets that happen on the blockchain. And then in 2016, you have more trading card games. You have this whole series of like rare PPs like collectibles that are being traded on Counterparty. And then in 2017, that's where Ethereum started to boom. And that is where people sort of went to Ethereum, right? Because of like how it's faster and stuff compared to Bitcoin. And how there's more general, it's a more general purpose blockchain compared to Bitcoin. And then so that's also where in the same year in June, right, CryptoPunks came out. So if you guys didn't know CryptoPunks, right, which are like these little things here, CryptoPunks are when they came out, right, CryptoPunks were actually free for people to claim. Yeah, and today each of them can cost up to like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and like some of the higher ones even sold for like millions and stuff. So then in October of the same year, you have your CryptoKitties that came out. So they are also a blockchain game, and it's a bit like your Digimon last time or your Tamagotchi, where you sort of buy the virtual cats, right? And then you raise them. They have different attributes, and then you breed them and stuff like that. Yeah, so that was sort of like where everything started. And I think if you look at the NFT market today, I think every day easily you have maybe like 20 to 50 projects launching across multiple blockchains, or even more, I may not even know. Yeah, across multiple blockchains, every day there are a lot of projects coming up. Of course, some you've heard of it because there's a lot of following. Some you don't really hear of it because it's just very personal and private collections that artists out there are creating. So yeah, that's the history of NFTs. And right now you can see sort of where the ecosystem is at. Even this thing that you see here is taken in 2019. So I think right now, if I were to fit everything in, it's probably going to be very small. You have a lot more marketplaces than what you have over here. Infrastructures that are built to support NFTs, and also way more games and collectibles than you see on this page over here. Yeah, but just a whole overlook of the ecosystem and the things that are surrounding it. Then we're going to use cases next. So these use cases is something that people don't really pay attention to because they always just think, oh, it's just a piece of art. It's just like apes and monkeys that people are selling ridiculously for high prices. So of course, the first use case is art and collectibles. So I'm very sure everyone is well versed with this, right? Within art and collectibles itself, there are a lot of different genres of it. You have your generative art pieces. What I mean by generative is the artist will create about 100 to 200 different traits, right? So like different kind of eyes, different kind of mouths, different kind of ears, and then it runs through a generative script to create 10,000 unique pieces that are like jumbled up, of course, like different eyes, different nose, different mouth, different combinations of assets. And then you have 10,000 of it. So those are your generative art collections. Usually collectibles, not really termed as art, because of course there's element of art involved, but because they are sort of randomly generated through script, we call them collectibles. And then it used to be 2D, right? So you see your Bored Apes, or even your CryptoPunks is like 2D pixelated, which was like really bad. And then moving up to this era, like today, you'll start to see a lot of like 3D pieces that are coming out. People are getting more and more creative. People are like leveling up their game in the NFT scene. And then you have your one-of-one art pieces. So these are usually done by your really renowned like digital artists or famous people in the art world launching their one-of-one art pieces. Of course, these one-of-one art pieces are not things that you take like one day to create. It's usually done through with a lot of like philosophical thinking, a lot of art elements induced in it. And then they call it one-of-one. One-of-one means there's only one of it out there in the blockchain. And then of course it's being bought up by rich people with a lot of money who are here to collect art for what it is, to appreciate the artwork, right? And then you have your Metaverse collectibles. So Metaverse collectibles are more like your, for example, Metaverse. Okay, so Metaverse basically just means like a virtual world, right? And your Metaverse collectibles can be your, let's say, sofa, right? So like different types of sofa. So they'll generate like different types of sofa, 3D sofas, and then you collect them in hopes that next time when this whole virtual Metaverse thing comes to life, right? You have a lot of virtual assets which are hopefully worth a lot of money, right? So imagine owning like a, how would I put it? Let's say even a piece of land, right, in the metaverse. So people value that a lot because they believe, different people believe to different extent about the future of metaverse. And so if you believe it and you think that you're worth a lot, then you'll pay for it. And then you start to have videos, you start to have moving GIFs as well. One of the few Singapore projects is like imaginary ones, they start to have like walking figures and stuff. People are getting more and more creative with art pieces. So later we'll explore some of this stuff. And then you have gaming as well. And I think the biggest one that you probably heard of, the one with the highest volume traded is Axie Infinity. So Axie Infinity is a play to earn game. Basically, you form your team by buying like 3 Axies, and then you play like adventure games every day. You fight player to player battles with other people, and if you win, you earn this token called SLP, also known as Smooth Love Potion. So this SLP is tradable in the market. Right now it's like, I think 2 cents. I'm not sure, but it dropped a lot. Okay, because you can think about it's like a inflationary token. So you generate income while you play the game. So this got really popular and got picked up by a lot of, I would say, third world countries, because just with a mobile phone, they were able to sort of earn a lot of income. And at a peak of SLP, which was like 30 cents, right? You can imagine every day a scholar could earn about 150 SLP, and you multiply that by 30 cents, that's like about $20, 20 USD, I think. Sorry, right? I'm not very good at calculating. I think it's about 10 to 20 USD. So daily, like 10 to 20 USD. A month is like 400 to 600 USD, which is a lot of money, like in the Philippines. It's even more than some of their parents, like mama shop that they opened in Philippines. So it was like, it took on a very huge wave of hype, and there were a lot of people coming in. There were even guilds that were sponsoring, because you need to buy 3 Axies first, right? And it's expensive to buy these 3 Axies. Think of Axies as like Pokemon, right? So it's very hard to buy, it's expensive to buy these 3 initial Axies. So there were guilds coming in to say, hey, I'm going to sponsor you to play the game for me. So you sponsor someone in Philippines or some other country who's willing to, someone else from another country or even Singaporeans who's willing to put in the hours every day to play the game. And then as an investor, you take a profit of the cut from the daily share. So it was a really like, kind of like Ponzi-like game, but in a way it was benefiting a lot of people from like third world countries. So it was really interesting. And then you have other gaming ones such as Gods Unchained as well. So this is like a trading card game, very similar to like Hearthstone, if you have played of it before. And basically all your in-game items, like all your cards, are ERC721 tokens. Okay, so when you see ERC721 tokens, it just means NFTs, right? They are ERC721 is the NFT standard on Ethereum blockchain. So when you see ERC721, it's just NFT. So yeah, it starts to get a bit better. So this one has a bit of like AAA gameplay. The graphics is a little bit better. And is building on Immutable X, which is like a layer 2 on top of Ethereum, because Ethereum is starting to get a lot of traffic and they're getting more and more expensive. So layer 2s are coming up on top of your layer 1s, right? So layer 2s basically helps a layer 1 to scale out to be able to handle more transactions at lower cost. So Immutable X is one of those layer 2, which this game is being built on. And then you have the more traditional kind of stuff, which is like ticketing. So ticketing is a really interesting use case, in my opinion, to be used as an NFT. So think about how traditional ticketing is done, right? You book a movie ticket online, you head on down to the cinema, you scan your QR code, and you get like the physical ticket, right? And then you pass through the guy at the gantry, which like either stamps on your movie ticket or he tears a small corner of the movie ticket to say you are in. So all these things can be eliminated by using NFTs as the movie ticket. And on top of just like, elimination of like wastage of paper and stuff like that, there's a lot of good things that can come out from using NFTs as a form of ticketing system. So for example, you bought a ticket to watch an NBA game. Let's say like, I don't know, let's say like you watch like a LeBron James game and then like he did like a very like clutch move, right? Like he did a buzzer beater and he won the game. So when you have a traditional NFT, you can't really capture that moment, right? I mean, you can capture it with your video, of course. You can use your iPhone and record that moment. But with an NFT, what you can do is you can have more functional memory. Within the NFT, you have metadata, right? So you can easily, within the ticket, you can easily score like the final points of the team, the two teams that played. You can easily store a video snippet of like the last point that was scored, right? The buzzer beater that was scored. You can also use it to do a lot of stuff. For example, redeem some sort of merchandise. If you bought a certain tier tickets, all these stuff were very manual, but with NFTs and with the ability to store like storage or sort of like to be able to store like small snippets of like data together with the NFT, it allows a lot of more functional memory, right, to be used. And there's a lot of other ways you can think about how to do it. Yeah, which I will not elaborate on, but basically it reduces the cost. It prevents all the fake tickets and scams as well that people are doing. Like you buy JChow ticket, you queue for it, and then you try and resell it on Carousel. Some people get scammed, some people don't. So this can be solved by NFTs because you can verify whether it's real or not. Right, so ticketing is one interesting use case. And last one, just now we talked about assets, right? How NFT can represent assets. And this is happening like in the real estate as well. To be able to like fractionalize real world assets, like your real estate, into smaller pieces. So for example, like for you and I, we can't really invest in real estate. Okay, I don't quote me, I'm not really sure, I'm not really into real estate, but we can't really invest into real estate if we don't have enough capital to do that. But imagine being able to break down like a plot of land into like really, really small pieces, like 1 million pieces, such that like household investor like you and I, we can sort of own a very, very small piece of this real estate and generate income from it, right? Because the rent that is collected is being split among this million of tokens, right? Being distributed to this million of tokens. And you basically eliminate the need for a middleman. Instead of someone going to collect rent and then distributing this individually to all the holders, right? Let's say it's split within, let's say traditional real estate, 2 people share and buy land. I have to go and pay A and B. But imagine splitting it to millions of holders. You eliminate the need for middleman because your smart contract on the blockchain can basically run it, right? Just click on the single function called pay rent, and then it basically distributes into like 1 million wallets. And then you basically are involved in real estate, right? So it creates a lot of opportunities and allow a lot more like retail investors like you and I to enter the real estate market. Yeah, so that's interesting. Of course, there are a lot more stuff. Personal health data is something that also can be tokenized. Imagine owning your own data, right? So instead of how Google is owning your data, how like the different browsers you use, the companies are owning your data. Imagine being able to own your own browser history. Like imagine your browser history or the websites that you visited and browsed at. Those things can be tokenized. And then based on how valuable the data is, companies like Google or Facebook who need your data to do analytics, they have to sort of buy it from you, right? They have to buy this NFT from you because you own it and they need your data to perform certain analytics or like improve their AI and stuff like that. So there's a lot of use case in terms of just data. So you can think of drivers' route data as well. Imagine Grab drivers, they own their traffic, they own their driving history. And this is really interesting because you can think of companies like ComfortDelGro or like Grab itself. They will need the data to understand where are the hottest spots for pickup, right? When is the peak period? And where they get all this data right now is just free because your data is basically being tracked. But imagine all this data can be sort of secure and you own your data. There's a lot of transactions that can happen. There's a marketplace for data that can happen. And data is basically a big thing, right? Even if with blockchain coming up, like AI is still something that is constantly evolving and booming. So it's really interesting to watch how the space moves. And then you have your supply chain. Over here I wrote fashion industry, but more specifically supply chain tracking. Like if I ask you today, where do you think your like chicken comes from, right? The chicken that you eat from your chicken rice store, like where do you think it comes from? Is it compliant with certain like food regulations and stuff? There's no way that you can find out, right? And there's a lot of manual systems, or rather different systems to go through if you want to trace it all the way back to the farm. But if you embed the whole supply chain system onto the blockchain, I think it's really interesting because at one glance you can see all the different transactions, right? Which we talked about, and also the transactions are immutable, so you don't have to be worried that they are fraudulent or like someone else like try and game the system. And then most commonly you have certificates. So instead of issuing you your bachelor degree with your certificate, which if you don't keep properly might go missing or might spoil in the future, having a functional like digital cert that can be verified, right? So like on your LinkedIn, for example, you have an NFT that showcases your bachelor's degree, and companies basically can see whether this is being certified or not by your institution. So this, think of it as like a lot of cryptography stuff happening, but like SMU can sort of sign on your cert to say that this cert is real, proven and given to this person, right? That SMU sign on. So certificates are one. And really anything else can be tokenized. So if you guys haven't saw this article, it's really funny, so you all should check it out. So this Indonesian guy, he took a selfie every day, and he put it up on OpenSea as an NFT collection, and it basically got viral, and it sold for nearly like USD 1 million in trading volume. Yeah, so I will show you it over here. Not sure if you guys can see it. Yeah, so basically this is his collection, right? And yeah, so this is basically what his whole collection looks like. Yeah, so he basically took a picture of himself and he posted it every day. And then like people were like, then someone caught on to it and then it got viral lah. And then some pictures are pretty funny. Like for example, this picture which has like the earphone. Then people will say like, oh, this must be rare, right? Because there's the headphone, and then the rest don't really have the headphone. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. This guy now is like quite famous because of this incident on Twitter and in like the crypto and NFT world. Yeah, so a lot of projects are finding him for collaboration. A lot of brands are finding him as well. Yeah, so he basically like bao hong from this. And then the next one is a Singaporean/China influencer based in Singapore. So she created like a collection on OpenSea consisting of like 1.1K items. And she was trying to prove a point of like content creator being able to like own their stuff. I need to go and check again. I think I read the article and I couldn't remember. So this is like her article here. So basically she's already quite a famous crypto influencer in the Web3 space. And she basically wanted to, like you can read here, right, disrupting the creator economy and stuff like that. Yeah. But basically very mean lah. So she earned a lot of money from this. Like Logan Paul was like buying it as well, spending a lot of money on it. And then it got viral. So interesting to see what you can do with NFT. So really anything can become an NFT. But of course not everything can make so much money. It all depends on a lot of factors, which I will not discuss here. So that's it for like the use case of NFTs. Up to now, is there any questions? If there are any questions, you guys can just type it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. If not, then okay, I'll just wait a while to see if there are any questions. Okay, then I'll move on. So next up, we'll cover about the different blockchains that are available out there for NFTs. Note that this list is not comprehensive, right? There are still a lot of other blockchains that are developing the space. So first one we have is Ethereum, which is probably the one that is most famously known for its NFT ecosystem. And there are a few factors that is required, or a few properties that are required for a blockchain to be able to handle NFTs. So a few of them are being highlighted here. First of all, like the token metadata has to be publicly verifiable. This allows people to prove ownership, right, and prove transactions from one hand to another. And it must also be immutable in a way when a transaction is confirmed on the blockchain and propagated to the rest of the nodes. There should be no way that someone can come in and manipulate the ownership of this token or this NFT. Or rather, actually, in any blockchain, if this is possible, it's a bit dangerous also. So I think this goes back to like the finality. It matters, like the finality of the blockchain, how it's being handled, how are things being confirmed on the blockchain. And then also that the blockchain, of course, has to support like peer-to-peer trading as well. And you don't need like a middleman to come in and manage or become like an escrow, meaning I don't have to hold item A and then make sure that you guys transfer money from each other before like passing it to another person. This should essentially be handled by a smart contract, which governs this rule, right? And then there needs to be a token standard that allows NFT to be portable across products. So this product that they're talking about can essentially be between different marketplaces. So for example, you have OpenSea, you have your LooksRare, you have a lot of other marketplaces on the Ethereum blockchain. So having a token standard basically means that, hey, like every NFT should have this certain function, should have the ability to be transferred, should be able to check the current owner of the NFT. So these are basically like properties that NFTs should have in order for them to be able to be showcased on different marketplaces, right? So that's what a token standard allows you to do. And of course, the blockchain should not be down. But of course, from Solana, we know that when it went down, nothing happened to the NFT because everything still stays as it is, right? When it recovers, the whole storage is still there, the transaction history is all still there. But of course, when it's down, it can't be reflected on the marketplaces. So OpenSea is the most famous one and is being founded by Devin and Alex in 2017. That was their beta launch. And on August 2021, which was sort of like, I would say like the peak of the NFT market at that time last year, it recorded over 3.4 billion transaction volume in just that month. And you can imagine that the platform takes a 2.5% cut from every transaction. So basically, in that month, they earn 2.5% of 3.4 billion, which is a lot of money. And then in September last year, they also rolled out their mobile application. So you still can't really trade on their mobile application because you have to connect it to your crypto wallet, right? So that's still the part where I think they're exploring the space. And then you have LooksRare, which is like a competitor to OpenSea. So this only came out like a few months ago, and they sort of tried to steal the attention away from OpenSea. So what they did was they did an airdrop of the Looks token, which says that basically if you have traded certain amount, you have certain transaction volume of OpenSea, you can now come to our platform and you can claim this token called Looks, right? There are a few things that they are also better or improved at. First of all is that OpenSea charges 2.5% for each transaction, right? Whereas on LooksRare, like 100% of the trading fees are distributed back to people who are staking the Looks token. So basically, like the platform is not earning from transactions, and you save a lot more money. And also, it makes use of wrapped Ethereum instead of Ethereum. So wrapped Ethereum has more flexibility in terms of Ethereum. Because sometimes when you trade Ethereum to something else, right? Let's say you trade Ethereum to like, I don't know, let's say trade to Phantom. Then what in the back end, right? Even though it shows Ethereum to Phantom, in the back end, it trades from Ethereum to wrapped Ethereum and then wrapped Ethereum to Phantom. So by using wrapped Ethereum, there's a lot more flexibility and also it lowers the cost price because it's one additional less swapping that you've done. So that's for LooksRare. And then you have Immutable X. So this one we talked about just now when we were discussing about like the God's Unchained the trading card game. So Immutable X is like the first layer 2 scaling solution specifically for NFTs. And they launched like last year, and they are growing quite fast. I think they're still sort of like building and trying to get more exposure of like the bigger NFTs on the space. But the reason why we needed a layer 2 was because on Ethereum itself, to purchase an NFT, or we call it minting, right? To mint an NFT, it costs like at least 80 to 100 plus USD. So your NFT might cost you 300 USD. I'm converting everything from Ethereum to USD. So your NFT might cost you 300 USD, and then just the transaction fees alone is like 80 USD, which is a third of how much your NFT is worth. So it's a bit ridiculous, and it became like an ecosystem where only like rich people could buy and sell, right? Only rich people could afford that sort of fees to trade. And having a layer 2 like Immutable X basically lowers the barrier to entry for a lot of people, a lot of retail traders out there who are just getting into NFTs. Of course, the standard of projects is a bit different. Yeah, so for example, like because it's expensive, right? So all the rich people are spending on Ethereum instead of like going to a layer 2 and spending it. So there's still sort of like a barrier to bring all these people from Ethereum, from OpenSea, and say, hey, go and use like IMX instead of Ethereum. So yeah, that's how it's done. And also they have a very simple developer toolkit. They are still constantly trying to make it easier to onboard developers onto the space to get NFT project to launch on the layer 2 instead. And then we have Solana. I haven't really been following the NFT scene on Solana a lot, but the last I remember, there are certain marketplaces like SoulSea or Digital Eyes, Solana as well. And this is an alternative to Ethereum. And in fact, it came out as a competitor last year during like the NFT bull run. And then like Solana came out to say, hey, you also can launch NFT on Solana, and it's way cheaper. It's also faster. But of course, remember the blockchain dilemma, right? Trilemma, right? So Solana is way cheaper and faster because it is less decentralized. And that is why like this is a blockchain that could actually go down. Like it actually has downtime. And then you get a lot of FUD about it and stuff like that. So Solana was one of the blockchains that came out to compete with Ethereum during the NFT hype. And they had this wormhole project. So this is quite a recent news. They had this wormhole project which allows people to bridge NFTs specifically between like Ethereum and Solana. So you can imagine them trying to grab people from Ethereum over to Solana to say, hey, bring your NFTs over to Solana because trading here is cheaper, buying and selling here is cheaper as well. But then this wormhole platform got hacked like just a few weeks ago, and it was like for $325 million. There was some error in the code and someone exploited it. Yeah, so and it also suffered a lot of like network outage. I think twice or thrice over the past few months, just after it became like really popular. Also, just to take note for developers out there, on Solana, you code in Rust, right? So their smart contract is done in Rust. And on Ethereum and Immutable X, they are EVM compatible chains, so it's done in Solidity. So next one, we also have a lot of other blockchains, like I said, not comprehensive list. You have your Binance NFTs, you have your NFTs on Luna, you have your NFTs on Cardano as well. And I think recently FTM also have their own NFTs coming up. And of course, now we'll talk a bit about Tezos NFTs. So Tezos itself is also a blockchain, and we also have our own ecosystem of marketplaces. So we have our first one, which is Hen. These are basically the few of the marketplaces. Some of the newer ones are like your fxhash, which is more for generative artwork, sort of like with an element of like randomness inside. I will show some examples later when we touch on the website. And why Tezos is better is basically just now we talked about a few issues that Ethereum faces, right? Which is your expensiveness of it, how it's not as fast compared to layer 2s or compared to Solana. So because Ethereum right now is still running on proof of work, and Tezos is basically a proof of stake blockchain, which makes it way cheaper and way more environmental friendly. We probably touched on this before for those of you who attended like previous sections when we introduced Tezos and sort of went in depth into why it is cheaper why it is faster and stuff. This allows to have low transaction fees, and it goes down to just like a few cents for you to buy or sell an NFT or even get an artwork minted on the NFT marketplace. There's also a strong NFT community. So within TZ APAC ourselves, we sort of have like a Telegram group with like all the APAC artists, people who are doing traditional art or people who are doing digital art as well. We are getting them to onboard onto our blockchain and get them to explore NFTs starting from our blockchain. We also have this feature which is called on-chain governance. If you guys don't know, maybe like research a bit about it, because this workshop is not about like the technicalities of it. Basically, it allows us to very quickly adapt and innovate based on what the narrative of crypto is, right? It can be NFTs, it can be DeFi, it can be some other stuff. Other blockchains, like for example, Ethereum, that has been wanting to upgrade to proof of stake for like the longest time, has been delaying, right? Because for them, doing an upgrade has a lot of risk involved. For example, when you do an upgrade, it's basically like a fork, right? And it can split your community into half. And on Tezos, you don't really face that option. In fact, every like 3 to 4 months, we have an update to our protocol to make sure that we are getting faster, to make sure that we are improving on new technologies that are being founded in just like the past few months, new protocols and stuff that are disrupting the space. So yeah, that's another thing about why Tezos is probably the better option for NFTs. And then we will explore some of the art on Tezos. So yeah, so over here, you can see there are a lot more. So generally for me, like the art on Tezos is very different from the art you see on Ethereum. On Ethereum, you see a lot of like pixelated projects. You see a lot of like basically like very ugly collectible projects that are out here just to cash grab, right? And the reason is because these people are very good at marketing. They are very good at building 100K followers on Twitter to get 50,000 people on Discord. But at the end of the day, it's not like real art, right? And you can tell it's not like real art. It doesn't attract artists. It attracts people who are in for speculative trading purposes. But on Tezos, it's a little bit different. There's a lot of innovation that is coming in when people are creating art. For example, just interactiveness. A lot of these are done with different thought process behind. There's a script that runs behind all this logic, right? To make sure that the art is just different in terms of logic wise. It's also, some of them are also interactive. So let me go to yeah, so for example, this one is an edition called by the Mad Hatters Club. So basically it's a bunny, and this bunny will basically follow your cursor around. It's able to like dance a bit, and it's also have like generative pattern. Basically for different holders, right, with different wallet address, you have different patterns that appear on your bunny. Yeah, so it's not just like maybe for my wallet is red, right? And then when you buy it and it's in your wallet, it uses like your wallet's unique address, puts it inside the back end of the code or the art piece, right? And it generates like a new color or a new pattern out from the bunny. Yeah, so a lot of innovation is happening within the space. Of course, not just on the Tezos blockchain, but I think a lot of these things came out first on the Tezos blockchain, just because like the digital artist in the ecosystem is more genuine in producing like new genres of art and exploring the space. This is an evolving art. So if I'm not wrong, this one, like for every people, when more people mint the art piece, right, then everyone's artwork will change and sort of like start to move towards completion. Yeah, so every single dot here is like someone who's buying the art, minting the art piece. And then with more people minting, it sort of evolves. So it's an NFT that is evolving, right, based on the number of people that's minting. So that's quite interesting as well. So, okay, what do I want to do here? So I want to talk about the future of NFTs, but I'm trying to see whether, okay, maybe I can jump into a few websites first. So this is Hen, right, that you see here. So this is a marketplace on Tezos, and you can see a few pieces of art over here. It's generally, you can feel like the vibes is just very different from like other very traditional generative like monkeys and stuff like that. Of course, your BYC is worth a lot, but it's more like artistic on Tezos here. Yeah, so when you click into an art piece, right, you can see the information listed over here. So you sort of see like the additions. Remember we talked about like, hold on, my mouse ran out of battery. Okay, so you have like additions over here, which shows like how many editions the artist launched. You have the owner of it, and then you have like the price, which is 3.3 TES. So TES is the currency used on Tezos. You can also see the history of, right? So this is the one we were talking about, right? The ledger that sort of stores transaction histories, the number of hands that are being transferred. Listing shows you the amount that people are listing at. So the lowest one here is 3.3 TES, right? And then the next one available is at like 4 TES. And then you can also click onto the metadata over here. I'm not sure whether I can load this. Yeah, so to a non-developer, you probably wouldn't be able to understand this, but this is like a JSON file which contains the name, the description, right, and then the text, the creators, and then this is basically like the image that is there, etc. So it contains like the information that we're talking about. This will also be like the same sort of metadata. If let's say we're doing just now, we talk about the ticketing system, right? So we can have like a video here, right, that stores the maybe like the buzzer beater video that is stored on everyone's ticket, right? There can be the date over here. There can be like a boolean here that says whether you have collected your merchandise or not. It can be true or false. So a lot of things you can do that you can embed into an NFT. Sorry. So yeah, so that's like the marketplace. Then we have fxhash, right? So fxhash is basically a platform that allows people to do generative artwork. So over here, you'll see a lot. What they do is that it allows you a platform to be able to fetch data, or rather get randomness on a blockchain and then put it into your script. Randomness is a sensitive issue on blockchain because essentially blockchains are deterministic. And to get true randomness, you go through an oracle to get randomness. Okay, these are starting to get very technical, which I will not jump into. Basically, think about it as blockchains. And then if you need to get real world data, right, let's say market prices, you need to go through this thing called an oracle, right? So the oracle provides the blockchain with like real world data. And that's also one way you need to go through to get true randomness. You cannot just like math.random on the blockchain. So you see a lot of interesting artwork here on fxhash. Which I will leave you guys to explore. If you guys need any of the links, I can just drop it in for you all to see later. Okay, so with that done, we went through Gozali, we went through Irene DAO, right? And then we have, so I'll go through some of the like blue chip NFTs as well. So this is your BAYC, which is at 98 Ethereum. So that's basically the lowest that you can get to buy a monkey over here, right? Which is a very popular blue chip NFT. So you can sort of see like the trading volume, how it evolved over the past few months, right? We can look at all time and see how the price movement has moved. Yeah, so just like maybe last year in June, you could have gotten it for like maybe 3 Ethereum, which is about 12K, I believe. And now it's worth like 98, right? So it's quite interesting. So you can head to OpenSea, you can go to the stats, look at the rankings, look at the top few projects, how much they are worth. It's interesting to see what they are trying to develop as well and their roadmaps, right? So let's jump back to the slides and let's talk about the future of NFTs. Show your collection. No, I'm not doxing myself here. Okay, but basically, so the future of NFTs, there are a few different things that have evolving. When NFTs first started up, it was like it was sort of like just pictures building on top of DeFi. And why I say that was because a lot of projects coming out were implementing this thing called staking. Basically, because they are tokens too, right? NFTs are tokens too. So you have your projects out there which require you to lock up your NFT, and locking it up basically means you can't trade it, right? You lock it up and then you get rewarded in their tokens. So for example, like if you lock up like a CyberKong, you lock up like a CyberKong NFT, you get rewarded in like banana tokens, right? And then these banana tokens is something that is tradable, but of course, these banana tokens will also be something that is needed within their roadmap, which means this banana token is needed to breed, for example, two CyberKongs together to get like a baby Kong, right? Or this banana token is needed to purchase in-game items, or you can even use it to purchase their merchandise and stuff. But staking itself is a concept that is very old, right? Okay, not say very old. Staking has been around for a very long time. And like NFTs implementing staking was more of like it's just introducing some sort of utility lah. Of course, for some of the NFTs, when you stake, right, and you get banana token, right, the banana token you sell, you can actually earn quite a bit. That's why if you go YouTube and you search like passive income with NFTs, there are a few tutorials out there to tell you what are some of the best projects to buy and stake. And then when you get the banana token, you just sell, right? It's like very good passive income. But overall, it's not like a very brand new innovation in the NFT space. And then you have your DAOs. So DAOs are essentially decentralized autonomous organizations. In simpler terms, it's like creating a group of people, right? So people who own the NFTs, they belong to a group, and basically they get to make decisions on the direction of the project. It can be how the funds are being used. For example, if they sell everything and they have $1 million, right? What should they do with the $1 million? Right. So this group of people who are owners, right? They have ownership of the project. They get to steer the direction of the project. So this is very interesting. Like for example, your Irene DAO is also trying to do the same thing here, right? She's trying to create like a creator economy. And of course, I don't know what she's gonna do with the money. I never follow closely. Yeah, basically it allows people to have ownership of the project, which is a good thing. That's the whole idea of decentralization, right? Like the people own the project instead of like centralized entities, right? Like for example, Google or Amazon, you can buy their stock or whatever, but they are the ones who decide whether your ship crashes or your ship flies to the sky. But whereas for a DAO project, the people are the ones voting and deciding on it. Of course, there must be a very proper system to do the voting. So that's for DAOs. And you have memberships, right? So for example, the blue chip NFTs that we talk about, BAYC or CryptoPunks. Of course, BAYC, they have a roadmap, right? But I think throughout the past few months where nothing was really coming up, it was more of an identity. Like owning a BAYC with the price that is being at gives you some sort of elevated social status. People are putting it as their profile pictures on Twitter. And when they tweet something, you just sort of, psychologically, you just think this guy knows what he's doing now because he owns a BAYC that is valued at 98 Ethereum. And that's also why Twitter came out with their recent feature, which was to verify NFT, right? Because you and we can just take a screenshot right here and then put it as my Twitter profile picture. And then all of a sudden, people think that, I'm some OG alpha guy who can give very good signals. That's why Twitter came out with the function to be able to verify NFTs. So membership NFTs are hard to build because it requires the NFT to have a certain element of cost or value. Right? So you can't just launch it and say this is a membership NFT because there's no value to it, right? It's like launching a brand and expecting people to wear your brand and feel proud in the public. Right? So you see your Acme, De La Vie, all the shirts that are up. They sort of have to build a community, build a following, then sort of like people wear it to have some sort of status, right? Same thing with like NFTs and stuff. And then it of course have to be expensive also. So those are for memberships. And last one that I have is actually on metaverses. So this is, I think, truly the most prominent future of NFT. Okay, so like memberships, right? It's already here, right? DAOs, they are also here. Staking, it's long I would say it's long dead really. Some projects are still doing it if there's potential use case for it. Metaverse is more like the future that everyone is looking at, not even just retail, like even your banks, even like Facebook slash Meta, right? Even Google. Every day you start to see like little news that big companies are investing into the metaverse. You have Adidas that is together with BAYC, and then you have Clonex. So this is Clonex. So Clonex, after their launch, they were actually bought over by Nike, and they're basically collaborating with Nike to do really cool stuff in the metaverse, which I will show you guys in a while. Let me finish this slide first. So what essentially is metaverse is basically like a virtual land where it's hard to imagine. It's hard for anyone to imagine because it's not like we play with the VR every day, right? But imagine like going to shopping. Imagine like you want to shop at Gucci or like Prada, right? And you don't really have to leave your seat to go to Orchard. What you do is basically you enter a virtual world. You walk into Gucci and Prada's flagship store inside the virtual world. You browse their collections and stuff. Of course, they must look as real as it is compared to real life, right? Or you browse their collections and stuff, and then you buy them. You buy them in the virtual world as a form of NFT. So now you own a piece of that Prada bag, let's say, in your virtual world, right? And because this is publicly verifiable, like Prada will then send you a physical piece of the handbag to your doorstep. So yeah, that's something interesting also, right? Or like you grocery shopping, but you don't have to go to NTUC. You don't have to walk or take bus to the NTUC. You just hop into your VR headset and you go and shop in the VR world, but yet have your physical goods delivered to you. It's a bit complicated, but it's like I read this article where it talks about like the interconnectivity between virtual and physical space when you intertwine them together. Of course, people wouldn't like the whole idea of just living in the virtual world, right? Because we still have to feed our like physical food and stuff. So like just living in the physical world just living in the virtual world, sorry, don't really make sense. But when you are able to intertwine it together, people might see that as an improvement in the quality of life. Some people might not. But it's interesting to see how everything plays out. So yeah, another thing, sorry, one more thing that I don't have a slide for is this thing called like it's a few interesting projects that I want to show. I don't really have an official slide for them, but I'll show you. So there's this project called like Generative Dungeon. And basically this NFT over here that you see, right? If I refresh it, right, it's like interactive. So it's really cool. So I can click to begin.
Welcome to Generative Dungeon.
I don't know whether y'all can hear the sound also. Yeah, so basically I can walk, right? I can walk around and I can like collect coins. And then I can explore like places.
Wonder if we welcome to your doom.
This was really interesting to me as a developer because I feel that it's innovation in the space and it's something that you don't really see. Yeah, so if you see the whole collection, hold on. Uh-oh, I don't know why it's not loading. Okay. Yeah, so if you see the whole collection, sorry, my internet is somehow slow. Yeah, it's quite interesting. You have different places to explore, and then I never really went into it, so I'm not sure what you collect the coins for. But this is like something that is very new. Yeah. So other than like moving artworks and stuff, this is the first time I see one that is interactive. So a lot of innovation is still happening in the space, right? And then just now we talked about Clonex, which partnered with Nike. Okay, yeah. So we talked about Clonex, which partnered with Nike, right? And then they have like a few developments. They start giving up this thing called like the pods, like Clonex pods, which are like a virtual space. Right, so it's interesting. Let me show you this. Yeah, so you can see this thing over here. Right, so this is essentially like the pod that you see just now, right? But in a virtual land. So I can literally go in here. Of course, I'm not wearing a VR headset right now. But it's like a virtual space, like your living headquarters as a Clonex, right? So this is how like Nike is moving or navigating their metaverse. And then you can showcase your artwork here. I think in the future, they are looking for you to be able to expand the space. So you can buy like maybe plots of land outside, right? And then you can, oh, I can open the door. Oh, yeah. So yeah, this is the original pot that they airdrop to everyone. So if you own like a Clone X, they will airdrop this pot to you. And then you can showcase like your NFT here, and stuff. Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's also like this whole move towards like architecture, like metaverse architecture. So people who are able to design this kind of stuff in the metaverse world will probably have like potential to have like good collaborations in the future. Right. So how do I exit this? Okay. So we have that. Anything else that I want to cover? No, generative X. Yeah, I think that's about all the stuff that I wanted to walk through. Yeah, so with that, I think I've ended my presentation relatively early. So maybe just a bit about TZ APAC for those of you who are new here. Basically, we are an adoption entity in Singapore that handles Tezos projects. So what we do is we try and think a bit of like evangelizing Tezos blockchain out there. Whatever that you see like NFTs being launched, all these can be replicated on the Tezos blockchain for a way cheaper fees. So if you are ever looking to develop something in the Web3 space, you are looking for a grant, you can feel free to drop us an email, let us know about your idea, your expertise, the team that you have, and what kind of product you're trying to build. We also do organize hackathons like once in a while. Of course, if like the people from SMU, you want to organize your own hackathons based on Tezos, feel free to reach out as well. Internships, feel free to reach out as well if we have the capacity to handle it. I'll leave you all at this slide, which has the contact number for both me as well as Brian. And then I think that's all. So, okay, Russell already sending the survey. Okay, but I'll open up the floor for anyone. Oh my God, we'll grab vouchers. Can I fill in the form also? Okay, but yeah, if anyone got any questions, or do y'all want to know like what's the process of like launching an NFT? I don't know if anyone is interested to know that, but basically, if you got any questions regarding what I've just presented, feel free to drop a message here. Yeah, or just unmute yourself and ask the question. I think I'll just open up the floor for a while. If there's no questions or anything, then I think we can call it a day.